talk a little bit more about things that you're doing right rather than wrong. So, yeah, what we're going to be talking about is actually a particular project that we've done about practice resilience in architecture. First of all, does anybody know NBS? Anybody not know NBS? Okay, so that's good. If you don't know NBS, you know that we provide tool and information for the architecture profession.
I'm going to speak up to the students here because they're not right now to say that they can.
Oh, sorry. I'm not really here to talk about NBS, but just for context. So NBS, we are actually owned by the RIBA. We're a separate organisation that provides knowledge, information, tools to help architects and designers make decisions. Hopefully, make life easier. And so we're taking over for tools that help provide specifications like NBS Create and NBS Building and things like that. The NBS National BIM Library of BIM objects. So that's NBS. But we're with a research team. I work in the research team with Linda, who you may know, who's sat there. And we do a whole range of research projects. Some of them that you may have seen will be things like the National BIM Survey that we've been running for 7 years. Some of you may have taken part in that. We do survey around specification, sustainability, things like that. And we also do a range of projects specifically for other organisations. And the one that I talked about is one that the RBA asked us to do around resilience. So just to give you some background about this, you may remember a fairly significant day last year when this happened. And I think after that, the biggest word that was used, I think the biggest thing that people talked about and still do talk about is uncertainty. You know, the only thing we were certain about after 23rd June was the fact that we were uncertain and perhaps remain uncertain. So the RBA has responded to what's happened and is doing lots of things to support members themselves. And part of that is around understanding RBA members and practices views and needs around Brexit, and providing a strong voice in working with government and putting the architects' professions' views up towards the negotiations which are happening at the moment. And also providing resources to support profession going forward. So the importance of that in terms of research is going and understanding what people are thinking at the moment and what their needs are around this. And that's where we come in, that's where we were asked to do the Resilience project. The RBA also did a survey last year and published a report to Global by Design based on the results of that survey of over 1,000 architects. And the reason for mentioning that is that what that showed at the time was that architects were concerned whether or not people supported Brexit or didn't support it. The research showed that nearly 2/3 of architects were concerned about it, and there was some evidence of projects being delayed or cancelled, put on hold, and also concerns among some people from other parts of the EU. They made a move, decided to leave the UK. So against that backdrop, what the RBA wanted us to do was to go and talk to architects, talk to people like yourselves and other practices around the country to find out in more detail what they were thinking about this. But also stepping back just from Brexit, and this is quite important, was to find out how practices have been resilient through change over time. So some of the practices we talked have been around for a while, some since the 1800s. And so we've gone through quite a degree of change, and they've adapted, survived, maybe even thrived during those times. So what the RBA wanted us to do was to take that learning from those organisations and then provide that back to the RBA and then provide it back to you so that you can perhaps hopefully take some of the advice, experience, positive experience that you learned about and then apply that in your own practices. Or if you're already doing all of those things, then perhaps it's reassuring that you're on a track which is going to be successful if times do get more difficult. So the way we did that was we took an in-depth approach. So rather than just a survey of lots of tick boxes, we spoke to people, and quite a lot of the time at length, for up to an hour or longer sometimes. People wanted to talk. We spoke to 21 practices, and they were of a range of sizes, so down from practice of 2 people up to practices of several hundred people, and then in between, all around the country, and individuals of genders, and generally people who were fairly senior in their organisations, a variety of experience. Over half had one office. In terms of the relationship with the EU, the practice we spoke to had a range of relationships with the EU. For some it was very direct, and they did work in the EU, and they had a lot of their staff were from the EU outside the UK. In some cases it was as much as a quarter or a third of their staff were from countries outside the UK but in the EU. For some they didn't have any, or very few EU staff, and they didn't actually work in the EU. But the whole issue of Brexit and what might happen was still something that was very important and something they were thinking a lot about. And we spoke to people who were in positions where they could tell us in quite a lot of detail about their strategy and their business planning and what they were doing as an organisation and how they made decisions and how they governed the business. So they tend to be partners, directors, associates of the organisations. In terms of the countries that people came from, where they employed people from the EU, they were from almost across the whole of the Union really, and the blue colours there show you where people were from. And Spain and Italy came up a lot, so they were countries where a lot of architects come from. So we found that people were really very engaged in this work, and I've done a lot of projects in different sectors and different industries for different reasons, and this is one that really stands out in terms of what people want to be involved with. If you're ringing somebody up and asking them to take part in a research project and say, can you talk to me on the phone for half an hour, sometimes that can be quite hard for them to find the time they give that to you, but in this case, people were really happy to talk. They had something to say. It was something that they were quite passionate about. So they were really engaged with it. What we also found is that people were very business focused, and I know that's something that I've not always heard in the context of architecture. That kind of thinking yourself as a business, but these practices did talk like that, and increasingly I think we hear that more and more. People thinking of the practice as a business and running it that way. They were very collaborative, they celebrated diversity in its many different forms, and generally, as I said, they were concerned about Brexit. And despite the concerns, they will be doing everything they can to prepare and adapt as they might need to when change comes about. So I'm going to go through the kind of things they told us about in terms of how they run their practices, and some of the things they do, which hopefully you may see as being good examples. And as we move towards the end of the talk, there are some quite specific things that people are doing or have done that hopefully you can perhaps take and apply or think about doing in your own practices. So when we looked at everything that came back, we kind of felt that things fell into these sort of different themes. So there was kind of the culture of the organisations that we spoke to, how they approach business planning and deal with, find out about and deal with change. There's the people aspect that we found was hugely important, and diversity. And then there's future proofing, so how do people adapt, how do they prepare? So we did quite a bit of fact finding. We were just asking people, do you have people in particular roles? Do you have people who are responsible for particular things beyond project work? Just finding out about how people organise themselves, how they govern their businesses. And we found that for functions like finance, and HR, and marketing, and IT, people generally had someone who was specifically responsible for those things. Somebody usually at the partner or director level who would be looking after each of those things, in addition to the their main role, if you like. In some of the bigger practices, there would be delegated staff, specialists in HR or marketing that have been employed, but not necessarily in all cases. But the key thing was that there was somebody who was responsible for these things, and that was clear. And sometimes that also went into things like the sectors they worked in. So if they specialised in health and education, there would be somebody who dealt with education, someone who dealt with health at a senior level. So that sounds like obvious things, but these are things that people are telling us in terms of how they organised and structured and took responsibility. At the top of the organisations, there tended to be a kind of a recognition that decisions had to be made, sometimes quickly, and that you had to have strong decision makers. People perhaps did this in different ways, but I think what was clear was that people, they had to take difficult decisions and take those in a way that showed leadership. Sometimes that was, and as much as possible, about being practical rather than necessarily react to things that are happening. So in some cases, whilst being strong in their decision making, they would also try to be open and collaborative and involve other staff. So that might mean the partners or the leadership team deciding that something had to happen, but then as soon as possible going out to the rest of the staff and actually communicating, explaining why a decision had to be taken, and sometimes also involving staff in making that decision. So there are some examples here where, thinking back to the last recession, where cuts had to be made, then the practice leaders were communicating what was happening and how it affected the business at every stage. And in one case here, then there was a consultation about whether the staff should actually work for less time each week and all take a reduction in salary and then share the load and share the burden across the practice. But they involved staff in the decision about whether they should do that or whether they should handle the cut in a different way. And there were a number of practices who took decisions in that way and collaborated and involved staff in those decisions. We found this collaborative culture extending to kind of every aspect of how many practices worked. So on a day-to-day basis, regular meetings was a really common feature. In the smaller practices, that tended to involve everybody all in the same meeting, all in the same room, perhaps around the table, perhaps even at lunchtime, sharing, again, very openly, things like business performance, project progress, projects won, projects being bid for, financial performance. So again, that's very open and letting everybody know what's going on. And also encouraging suggestions and ideas and questions from people within the practice as well. For some of the bigger practices, they had more formal structures, staff councils, work groups. Again, other ways to involve people, bring people forward to suggest ideas and ways of working. And sometimes it was a social thing too, getting people together, whether it was at lunchtimes or after work. In one example, one practice involved people from outside their leadership team in their regular strategy meetings. So each time they had a meeting, the leadership team meeting, one of the members of the leadership team would invite somebody else from the business to come and join that meeting for the day. But when they came to the meeting, they had to bring their own subject for discussion. They had to lead the discussion, they had to facilitate debate. But in return for that, they got to understand how the business was run, if you like, which helps for succession planning and bringing people through as the business grows and evolves. We found that many of the people we were talking to were very interested in technological change, in new ways of working, in innovating, and that being something which they saw as continually important, even when times were difficult, even when it was hard to spend time investing in new things or spending time learning about new things or new technology or new ways of working. They saw that being something you couldn't drop when times were getting difficult. So Bain being an obvious thing that people mentioned, that was something people didn't talk about and something people had seen direct benefits from. So there are some examples of people saying that their knowledge and expertise in Bain had got them through difficult times in a differentiator for them when winning business. It saved them money and made things more efficient. And then looking forward, many of these organisations are telling us about how they were using their virtual reality more and moving into that area. But also some of the things that are perhaps the less exciting, perhaps glamorous sides of technology and innovating how you run the business. Things like practice management, accounting, measuring profitability of projects. So there was one practice we talked about, getting some new practice management software they hadn't had before, and looking at the different clients and the work they did for them. And they kind of assumed the big clients they had were the ones where they made most money. When they actually ran this through their software and looked at the different projects they'd done, they find that wasn't necessarily the case. So having that ability to track that and to actually measure that meant that they were able to perhaps bid a bit more strategically and go for the work that made most sense and was most profitable for them. Okay, so this research has been mentioned a couple of times today, and that's something that we found that people talk quite a bit about, the value they placed on doing research and then how they use that. So some of the practices we spoke to placed a lot of importance in this. Some had people who would work on a research project perhaps for several months and spend time focused on that. In some cases they published their own research. So there was one practice that was looking at the housing crisis and did some research around that. I think partly because they wanted to contribute to finding a solution for that and looking at that and their own ideas in kind of white paper type format. But instead of doing that and then making it public, they then got really good feedback from clients doing it. In fact, they were told that perhaps if they let some clients know before, they might actually sponsor it and supported them in producing it. So that's a really good way for them to raise their profile in a really positive way. So it's not going to affect business development. One of the really key things that came through when we were doing this work about the culture of the organisations we were talking to is the importance of having a sustainable business. And I don't think anyone that we spoke to had a target of growing the business as such. That really wasn't a priority. I think some of the practices liked the fact that they were growing, or in the long term they envisaged growing, but the priority seemed to be much more about having a sustainable business that would survive in the long term, that would be created by a group of people that worked well together in creating great architecture that made a difference to people. That's what they were really interested in doing, and perhaps they were growing in a very stable and steady kind of way. So even some of the larger organisations, growth wasn't the main priority. And I think one of the key things around that was finding the right people that worked well in the business and worked well together, and developing those people so they would stay for the long term. And people talked about the difficulty of people leaving, having to replace them, to be really time consuming. Something which can really affect the business, especially in a small practice when it's perhaps only 2, 3, 4 people. So that was really important to people, and I think for some of the more experienced people that we spoke to had been in the industry for some time, and they were looking at how they would bring through the next generation of people to lead their businesses. That's what they were really about. They were trying to share their learning and pass that to the next set of partners in the organisation, and that was what really motivated them a lot of the time. But yeah, in amongst this, there's always the desire, I think, for most people to get into the profession in the first place, to create better buildings and better spaces, and hence the comment there about not wanting to build a wall. So then we look at the more practical side of business planning and change. So we asked people about whether they plan in a strategic way, an organised way, and for many, almost all people we spoke to, it was something they took really seriously. And I wonder actually, if I can ask people now, does everybody have a business plan? Is there anyone who doesn't have a business plan if you're prepared to do that?
Doesn't all does.
Anyone? Yeah, absolutely who does at the moment. Show of hands. Okay, so some do, quite a few don't. So that was something that almost all the practices we spoke to did. There were a couple who didn't have formal ones. It was more kind of, they discussed things, they had a it wasn't necessarily written down in terms of a formal document. Most people had something that was formalised. And I think for some people what was key was that they would revisit it. So they'd have a plan, but they would also look at progress against the plan, and they would change it as things were happening and as the environment around them changed. Also what was key was that whilst the partners of the business would tend to create the plan, again, they would always consult with other people in the organisation to make sure that that was a plan that was going to work for the business, that everybody bought into. And also, again, they would look to get ideas from other people in the organisation to make sure that they were sort of benefiting from all the different experience and ideas that people had. So part of planning and running a business is about being aware of change. And we asked people how they did that. And this was a funny one because for most organisations, having a real formal process for this wasn't something they tended to do, but they all did it and they all took it very seriously. So a lot of this was about reading, a lot of it was about networking, talking to other people within the profession, but also people outside the profession. So understanding what's going on in the wider economy and then what's going on within the regional economy, as well as what's going on within construction and the built environment was seen as really important. So some of that was about reading the mainstream press. So one person gave an example of how somebody read the Guardian, someone read the FT, someone read the Times, and they did that, and then they shared with each other what's happening within those different publications. So it could be as kind of informal as that, but they were making sure that they were reading those things as well as reading the AJ and the construction press as well. They would also use other sources, Bank of England, Office of Statistics, and white papers produced about things like housing and other sector development. And for some, that understanding of the kind of broader economy was more important than actually what's going on within the construction industry itself, because that understanding and knowing what's happening that's affecting the clients that you're working with is really going to give you an idea of what's going to be happening, what's going to affect you in the long term. So just thinking more about change, we wanted to understand more about what had affected people and then talk more about how they adapted to that. So without asking people to talk about Brexit, we asked people what have been the biggest changes for them in the past. And it was the boom and bust cycle, it was the economic cycles of recession and growth which affected people the most. And that's what people talked about as really affecting their business, both in times of growth and in times of recession. So the obvious things that businesses having to reduce, people losing staff, and all of the challenges and the difficulties associated with that. And also then through the growth time, sometimes people growing too quickly, and having to manage that, how you manage bringing new people in to handle the work that you've got, maintaining quality and those things. But Brexit was still very high on the list, and people did talk about that and were concerned about how it already is affecting them and how it may affect them in coming years. So, interesting comment at the bottom was that one person said to us, well, they set up a recession, so they've always been dealing with difficulties, they've always been dealing with challenge and change, and their expectation was that's just how it will be. That's the environment that they're working in, and that's how it will continue to be. So just a bit more on Brexit and on leaving the EU and why that's something that people were concerned about. So generally, people thought being integrated with the EU was a good thing and was something that was important. Not everybody thought that, but a lot of people did. And the reasons was the trade. So again, as an economy as a whole, trading with the EU was something which has already been really important. And some talked about clients that they have who are in a whole range of industries themselves, but of course will be affected by the outcome of the Brexit negotiations, and therefore will affect the practices that are working with those clients. Being able to use European products in the UK, so something that people were concerned about. So with things like import tariffs, or potentially if there are any changes to the harmonisation of British and European standards, will that affect their ability to import products like German cladding, just given as an example. And they also, just if people are directly working in EU countries, so there were some practices who were doing that, and there were some practices whose projects had been put on hold now that things have been a bit more uncertain about the future of those. But perhaps what we were more concerned about was changes to freedom of movement, and staff. People really valued the richness and diversity of staff that they had with people working who were from other parts of the EU. But even the practices that didn't necessarily employ staff in the EU were also concerned, because if there's a general shortage of skills, if there are fewer people, then they were recruiting and trying to maintain staff. So where London might have an acute, be affected acutely by EU staff potentially leaving or not coming to London, if there is a drain from the regions of the UK to London, that can affect people in parts of the UK as well. But just some comments that people made around this, telling us a bit more in their own words about why they're concerned or why they felt things were uncertain. So, talking about the skills shortage in architecture and construction. So some people talking about, the really high proportions of people on construction sites, particularly in London and the South East, who were from countries outside the UK, and how that may well is likely to change. And some of the skills shortages already, people talking about shortages in the building trade, and someone saying they can't find any bricklayers because of the recession, but lots of bricklayers out of work and now they're retired. So those kind of concerns are likely to be exacerbated. But I have to present both sides of the argument, and some people weren't concerned about the impact of leaving the EU. Some people didn't think it would affect their business much and would carry on as usual. And for some, they might have their own concerns, but their clients weren't. So there were different views, which again, I suppose, comes back to the uncertainty. So now we just talk a bit about people and diversity. It sounds a really obvious thing to say, the importance of people, especially in a profession that is very much based around people's skills and knowledge. But people talked a lot about this, about how the individual people within the practice, especially in a small practice, contribute so much to the character of the practice and what that practice is about, and the success of the practice in the long term. So having the right people, investing in them and keeping them is something which is really central. So people want to hold on to them, they want them to choose to leave or to leave. And diversity was seen as something that was really brought a huge amount to the practices we talked to. So having the kind of different perspective of architecture in another country, perhaps different strengths and skills from that country, whether it's more technical skills or whether it's more of a design-led approach, was seen as being really important. And sometimes it was even less tangible than that, just having a different group of people who have different ways of thinking, different perspectives was really valued. And some people were really passionate about this and really felt that if we lost some of this, then it would have a knock-on effect to British architecture and the reputation and strength that British architecture has around the world as a place to something to be part of as an architectural community. So I mentioned the training skills to London, so there's an article here about that. And just that concern that any reduction in the number of people wanting to come into the architecture profession in the UK or deciding to leave it could have a knock-on effect to the region, as well as having an effect on the South East and London too. So I want to move on to having looked at some of the challenges that people face. Having a look at what some people are doing and what they're saying about what they're doing and how they prepare for change. Whilst there was a lot of concern about the aftermath of Brexit, there were also people telling us that we run our business in a certain way and we'll do that regardless of what change comes. There are things that we do to prepare ourselves for change and we'll keep doing that. So it's the latest challenge. It might be a big one, but it's the latest one. And some of the things people talk to us about, I think, echoes some of the things that have already been said today. And again, whilst they seem obvious, there were things that some practices felt they did particularly well, or that not all practices necessarily always do, but something's really important to do. So being responsive to client needs, really understanding what those needs are, is really important. Just listening, and having that skill and that ability to do that, to listen to what clients want. And build strong relationships with them, and also other people that you may work with collaboratively. And one aspect of this is actually understanding how clients are being affected at the moment and how their sector may be changing, whether it's growing or shrinking or what else might be affecting it, which therefore enables you to decide where you might bid for work or when a bid may be coming up. So some of the things that people talked about came back to this kind of this business focus, if you like. So being proactive, taking an approach where your people are leading. Some of that's about planning, some of that's about having plans and building planning into the process, the day-to-day way that you go about your business. Some of it's about taking tough decisions quickly when they need to be taken and then moving on. Some of it's about things like creating links with education providers. So one of the things that's going to be happening is that we're looking to try to fill the skills gap that is there and could be made worse, then having those links with colleges and universities to help bring people through. So things like the Plan B initiatives and bringing people through for apprenticeship programs, teaching universities, strengthening those links. There were some practices of doing those kind of things. And also the importance of doing research and raising profiles through that. There was also anticipating change as much as you can anticipate it. It is something which is actually hard to do, especially at the moment. But things like planning for different scenarios and working through what might happen and therefore what you might do to react to those scenarios was something that some practices were doing. And some really simple things, but maintaining reserves, keeping something back for when that might be needed. Information is really key, so assessing profitability and measuring that, measuring resource use is something that people are doing and advocating. And where there are things that you know, focusing on what you know and what you can actually influence. Some tools also about bringing in expertise where there were seeing shortages. Some people that actually meant working with organisations outside the UK, even outside the EU. So some people were working with specialists in like CGI technologies and that in France or in Far East. So again, building those kind of relationships and getting skills where they needed to, if they had to do it outside the EU. People sometimes use this phrase, being light on your feet. So this kind of idea that you can adapt quickly and be flexible and respond to change quickly. And sometimes that was associated with being small and being easy to do that when you are practicing with a few people and you can quickly change what you're doing. So there was at least one practice that said actually being small was something that helped them. In the last recession they grew because they were able to react and move quickly and do things quickly when they needed to. So that was seen as an advantage in some cases. And for some, it would be things like reviewing working arrangements. So, if people can work at home or work more flexibly, then that would mean they would need less office space and then reduce their costs, that kind of thing. Some about being strategic in marketing terms. So, deliberately thinking, which sectors do we want to work in? Which areas, what kind of work do we want? What sectors are likely to be growing? Which sectors are likely to be shrinking? So looking at kind of market data and understanding what's going to affect those things in the future. So there were some examples of practices who focused on public housing after private housing slumped in the last recession. There were some who said taking an approach by making sure you're in a few sectors, so that if one sector goes through a difficult time, then you need to fall back on work in the others. For some, it was actually finding a niche. There was one practice that we spoke to that did a lot of work with historic buildings, and they found a niche that was growing and appears to be not affected particularly by Brexit, the uncertainty around that, and they can develop that niche, and that's sustainable for them. For some, focusing back on working in the UK was something that they were doing. So the solution isn't the same for every practice, but it's knowing what's, as far as you can, what's likely to happen to those different sectors, and then capitalising on the opportunities which make most sense for you and your strengths in those sectors. Where you can, and it's perhaps one of the things which is more difficult to do, but the advice was to continue to innovate and invest even when times are difficult, and to take a long-term view. So adopting new ways of working and new technologies, the costs and time and money around those things are challenging, but by taking a long-term view, people are saying eventually they pay off. Proud of their cultures, proud of the positive cultures they've created, and they really want to keep those. You know, they saw that as really key to surviving and sustaining their practices in the long term. So some of that was about having a clear vision, whether that's written down or whether that's something which is talked about regularly and communicated by people running practices. But having that vision is something that everyone can get behind and all sort of buy into. So that was seen as something which is important to have. And of course, if you've got that, you've got to eventually communicate that to people in practice so they can all buy into that vision. For some things, it's very kind of practical things. So some practices told us about how during the better times they brought in a reward culture, they brought in pensions, sabbaticals, things like that to reward people and hopefully keep them in the long term. For some people, they did things when times were more difficult. So there was one small practice that told us about how during the recession, because times were hard for everybody, they started paying for everybody's lunch. So for the business, it was perhaps a relatively small cost, but for the individuals, it was something that could perhaps help them out a little bit. But once growth returned and times were a bit better, they carried on doing it because they realised that actually having that lunch together was something that was really positive for the practice that they wanted to carry on doing, so they continued to do that. Encouraging autonomy and ownership among individuals was also something that was really important. So in one example, people talked about actually encouraging not just the people leading the business to look for new business and to help business development, they also encourage other members of staff to do that, who perhaps wouldn't have been involved in that before, and actually it was successful. So that was another way of helping the business to sustain and grow, but doing it through other members of the practice, which also helps those individuals develop in the long term. Okay, so just we talked to people about their own personal resilience, people who've perhaps been a fair amount of experience and been around for a little while, what drove them that they could share. And for some, they were ambitious. They had ambitions to develop good organisations and to develop sustainable growing organisations or commitment to great architecture. And for some, it was ambitious in the long term to bring in new people and to share their learning with them. And actually, that's what a lot of people were telling us was important to them, to sustain the business in the long term and bring through the new leaders. So that's that whole kind of succession planning. And there were some examples where practice that started off as being two people in partnership, and their practice name being those two people's names, actually started to move away from that and changing their brand a little. So they were changing it down to being the initials rather than the name and something like that, and looking forward to sort of the next sort of phase in the business that was based less on those two or three individuals and actually the business in the long term. So there was one example here of a small practice where the The main director of the practice was ill and couldn't be there for quite a long time. Of course, was worried about how the business would deal with that and how it would function while they weren't there. And actually, they realised that the business could function and that they needed to realise that they couldn't be hands-on with everything. They had to pass things down to the people. They had to share responsibility and realise that they had to strengthen the skills within the practice that could be done, that was possible to do. So looking at all of that, trying to make some sense of it all, what we felt in our discussions with the RIBA and how we interpreted all this was that the characteristics of resilient practices kind of revolved around these sort of four things. So the practices were business focused, that they were innovative, that they were also diverse and inclusive in many ways, and adaptable. And that these are four characteristics which really represent practices that have been resilient. And just, I suppose, to add a little bit more to that, there's a quote here you can see from one practice. It's quite long, but it kind of explains it in better words than I can, about the importance of being business-like. And that doesn't take away from the fact that what they're most concerned with is about good architecture and good design, but it's something that you have to do to enable that design. So, it's on architecture.com, which you may have seen, which is shown on the screen there. And then what we're also doing now is working with us to create case studies of some of the practices we've spoken to share their practical examples in more detail, which will be also on architecture.com. And other further resources and information and more pieces which hopefully will help to sort of add weight to what I've been talking about today. So this is kind of just the first step really of what we've been doing, sharing this research. So I hope it's useful, and does anybody have any questions?
How did you choose the practices with your farm?
So it was a mixture of things. So some of it was about demographics, so making sure we had a spread of smaller, larger, different locations and so on. Then we wanted to speak to people who were felt to be resilient, which is obviously something subjective. So we looked at a few things. We looked at practices that had been established for a little while, so they've been through times of change already. We looked at practices that had kind of become known or established a reputation for doing things that were innovative or being resilient. And we also, some of that was about ones that were known by, in the community by the RBA, ones that they already knew, giving examples of doing things that were kind of resilient, innovative, those sorts of things. So it was subjective, but it seemed to be a good representation of the sector. And there will undoubtedly be many other practices outside that group who do lots of positive things as well.
Is the NBS doing any other social research projects? Soft stuff.
Softer stuff, yes. So, how do you mean?
Well, just going out and getting some knowledge about something like the profession, I suppose. So you mentioned earlier that you're engaged by outside bodies sometimes.
Yes.
So is that generally proactive research?
It can be a range of things. It can be.
Right. I didn't realise that an NBS had this kind of research.
Yeah. So it's. Yeah. So it's a.
That's what you do.
Yeah. It's a relatively new thing, I suppose. We've probably been doing it a little bit for a few years, but more so recently. And we've done. So there is a range. So some of it's working for government and doing stuff around regulations and that kind of thing. Some of it's doing work with the RBA, some of it's doing work which is more product focused and about technologies and products in the industry. So it's a range of things, but in a way it could be anything anybody wants us to look at within construction, within the broad environment. So we're kind of open to doing work with a variety of things.
Did you have anything to do with the RIBA benchmarking?
No, we didn't.
It just seems there's a lot of data missing from the North East, specifically in terms of sort of
in the benchmarking survey.
Yeah, and so your survey seemed to always refer back to the southeast and
Sorry, yeah, part of the reason I mentioned it was just because some of the things people talked about with the work we did and the impact on practices from the point of view of the EU. If people were to leave the UK and go to the EU, or if fewer people wanted to come from the EU to the UK, the practices that were most worried about it generally were the ones in the South East, in terms of the direct impact that it would have, just because some of them employed so many people from the EU. But we spoke to people across the country, so we spoke to people from the southwest, in the northwest, in the northeast, in other parts of Yorkshire, and as well as the southeast of London. So the research wasn't biased towards the southeast at all. It's just that for some of those things, that issue was particularly acute to people in the southeast.
It's a good point though, because we're child practice, but you're right, the north east there's a gaping black hole in the survey. I don't know why.
I think I
can tell you why actually. It's because for anybody who's trying to practice and fills their benchmarking survey in, does the who do, because I asked this exact question after.
Well, we got an email threatening to be taken off of it.
The numbers who were filling them in have dropped below reliable data.
But it was so relevant.
I don't know the exact number, but it's
a requirement for being a child
it's
practice.
police requirements.
Right.
It's unfortunate.
Police.
Yeah. I mean, it's off the point a little bit. It's off the point a little bit, but Liam raised this previously, and what they're looking at is providing a range. So rather than giving unreliable data based on that number, so particularly about salaries, providing a range. So hopefully we'll get somewhere with that, but that's obviously nothing to do with it.
I just felt that most of the questions were not, they may have been more relevant to slightly bigger practice. I felt like I was answering questions who were off the bottom of the threshold of any of the questions that were being asked, and there was a lot of the data you've collected there there must be a sort of critical mass of about at least 5 or 6 people in practice in order to be able to have conversations with each other and sort of discuss diversity and those sorts of things. And I suppose, how was the small, very sort of micro practices just sort of showing up in that survey? Did you speak to sole practitioners?
Yeah, I don't think we spoke to any sole practitioners. We did speak to practice that had 2 people, and we spoke to some that had so the numbers are sort of 3, 4, 5, 6, and some under 10. So it's that kind of micro area size.
It would be a very useful thing, maybe a little bit of research. The geographical things, where the concerns are, different regions aren't getting right into because there's so many sole practitioners too strong. And it's very difficult, it's completely different problems in some senses. I don't know how long this research takes, but it's a long study or.
I think something like this takes a few months, I suppose. So like right from beginning to end, the whole process of designing it, doing it, analysing it, writing it up, that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, we did try to make sure we spoke to a range of different sizes, because the work that was done and we were asked to do it was to represent the sector as a whole. So so that meant speaking to the smallest practice and the largest, pretty much as much as we could. And also the different regions, so making sure that we did speak to people, for example, in the southwest, which again has different challenges to other regions, although still in those regions, people we spoke to there were talking to us about their concerns about Brexit as well, even though they might have a quite different sector, different market that they're working with compared to London. It was still something that was quite important to them. So we were trying to, I suppose, manage those different needs with that sort of sample 21 practices.
I suppose just to put it in context about this, benchmarking reports every year, and in the context of this seminar today, the core is, I actually find it's actually a very useful tool. We do it every year where we benchmark ourselves against that report. We kind of work out where we are in sort of the grand scheme of things, and sort of check out every heading to sort of see if we're doing all right compared to others, and kind of sets the agenda for sort of sorts of annual meetings.
Right.
Just sharing sort of sort of practice that we do, and it's a real good eye opener. It's really good.
Brings it nice, isn't it?
Well, no, it kind of, sort of allows you to maybe you turn over the profit you're making or not making, or,
Get paid more.
but all salary guides, and, it's, people aren't aware of it, and it's really useful.
Okay, no, thanks very much, David.
Thank you.